The kitchen felt colder without her laughter echoing off the granite countertops. I stood there, coffee mug in hand, reading the handwritten note Vanessa had left propped against the fruit bowl like some kind of homework assignment. Think about your mistakes while I'm gone. Maybe we can fix this when I get back. V. Fix this. As if our marriage was a leaky faucet I could repair with the right wrench. I crumpled the note and tossed it toward the trash, missing by a foot. Even my aim was off these days. Vanessa had been gone 3 days now, living it up in Ibiza with her girlfriends on what she called a spiritual journey. The irony wasn't lost on me. My wife, who couldn't meditate for 5 minutes without checking her phone, was supposedly finding inner peace on an island famous for its all-night parties and loose morals. I walked through our 3-story colonial, noting how quiet it felt without her constant chatter about office drama or her latest wellness obsession. The silence should have been peaceful, but instead it amplified every creak of the old house, every tick of the grandfather clock in the hallway. My phone buzzed. A text from Vanessa. Having the most amazing time. You should try letting go sometime. Maybe then you'd understand what happiness looks like. The photo attached showed her in a barely there bikini, arms wrapped around some guy I didn't recognize. Behind them, the Mediterranean sparkled like scattered diamonds. She looked radiant, carefree, nothing like the woman who'd been picking fights with me for months about everything from my work schedule to how I loaded the dishwasher. I poured another cup of coffee and headed down to my workshop in the basement. As a construction manager, I'd built this space to be my sanctuary. Organized, functional, everything in its place. Power tools lined the pegboard walls, lumber stacked precisely by type and length. Here, problems had solutions. Measurements were exact. Nothing was left to interpretation. Unlike my marriage. I'd been working on refinishing an antique dresser Vanessa had bought at an estate sale, back when she still pretended to care about our home. The piece sat half-stripped, abandoned like so many of her projects. She'd start something with tremendous enthusiasm, then lose interest the moment it required actual work. My phone rang. Vanessa's name lit up the screen. "Nick, you answered!" Her voice carried that artificial brightness she used when she'd been drinking. "I wasn't sure you would." "Why wouldn't I answer? You're my wife." "Well, you've been so distant lately, so closed off." Music thumped in the background, voices laughing and shouting in multiple languages. "I'm calling because I wanted you to know I'm having revelations here. Real breakthroughs about what I need." "And what's that?" "Freedom, Nick. Space to be myself without constantly worrying about your judgment." I set down my coffee mug harder than necessary. "My judgment?" "You know what I mean. The way you look at me when I want to go out with friends. The comments about my spending, the general disapproval radiating from you like some kind of toxic cloud. I work 60-hour weeks to pay for your lifestyle, Vanessa. Forgive me if I occasionally question dropping $300 on a purse you'll use twice. See, there it is, that tone." She sighed dramatically. "Sabrina was right. She said you'd never understand." Sabrina. Vanessa's best friend since college, a self-proclaimed wellness coach who charged desperate housewives $200 an hour to tell them their chakras were blocked. I'd never liked her, and the feeling was mutual. What exactly did Sabrina say? Just that some people are meant to soar, and others are meant to stay grounded. It's not your fault, Nick. We're just different species. The condescension in her voice made my jaw clench. Different species. I have to go. We're meeting some locals at this amazing beach club. But I want you to really think while I'm gone, okay? Think about whether you can be the man I need you to be. The line went silent before I could respond. I stared at the phone, her words echoing in the sudden quiet. The man she needed me to be. What exactly did that mean? I climbed the stairs to our bedroom and opened Vanessa's walk-in closet. Half her clothes were gone, but she'd left behind a jewelry box I'd never seen before. Inside, tucked beneath her college sorority pin, was a folded piece of hotel stationery. The letterhead read Hotel Esvedra, Ibiza. The note was in Vanessa's handwriting. E, room 347 after midnight. Make sure your wife doesn't call. V. My hands trembled slightly as I read it again. E. Who was E? I searched through her remaining belongings more thoroughly now, no longer respecting her privacy. In the back of her underwear drawer, I found a second phone I'd never seen before. An iPhone in a pink case, protected by a passcode I didn't know. But I knew Vanessa. Her passwords were always the same, her birthday followed by her initials. The phone unlocked on the first try. The message thread with E made my stomach drop. Hundreds of texts going back 3 months. Photos I couldn't bear to look at for more than a second. Plans for their Ibiza rendezvous. And worse, much worse, conversations about me. He's so predictable, she'd written. Works all day, comes home tired, watches the news, no adventure, no passion. Sometimes I feel like I'm married to my grandfather. E had responded, "You deserve so much better. A woman like you should be worshipped, not taken for granted." The most recent exchange was from yesterday. "He has no idea," Vanessa had texted. "Still thinks I'm on a girls' trip. Men are so stupid." "What are you going to do when you get back?" "Haven't decided. Might be time to trade up." I sat on the edge of our bed, staring at the evidence of my wife's betrayal. The woman I'd loved for 8 years, the woman I'd built this house for, was planning to leave me for some stranger she'd met online. My phone buzzed with another text from her. "Don't do anything stupid while I'm gone. I'll know if you do." The arrogance of it hit me like a physical blow. She was cheating on me, planning to leave me, and still felt entitled to control my behavior from 3,000 miles away. I typed back slowly, "Enjoy Ibiza." Then I deleted the message thread from my phone and slipped her secret device into my pocket. If Vanessa wanted to play games, I'd show her how it was done, but first I needed to know exactly who I was dealing with. Mrs. Pritchard was watering her roses when I stepped outside the next morning. Our 70-year-old neighbor had lived on Maple Street longer than anyone, and she noticed everything. If a car parked where it shouldn't, if someone's trash went out on the wrong day, if a marriage was falling apart, Eleanor Pritchard knew about it. "Morning, Nick," she called out, not bothering to hide her curiosity. "Vanessa still on her trip?" "Still in Ibiza." I walked over to the property line, noting how she angled her body toward me like a satellite dish seeking a signal. Such an exotic destination for a girl's trip. Her tone suggested she found it suspicious. When Harold and I traveled with other couples, we usually stuck closer to home. Less tempting, if you know what I mean. "I'm not sure I do." She glanced around conspiratorially, then leaned closer. "Well, I don't like to gossip, but I've noticed some unusual activity at your house lately. Cars I don't recognize. Visitors when you're at work." My pulse quickened, but I kept my voice steady. "What kind of visitors?" "A silver BMW, mostly. Expensive looking. The driver never stayed long, but he seemed familiar with the property. Knew exactly where to park, which door to use." She paused meaningfully. "This was before Vanessa left, of course?" "Of course," I managed to smile. "Thanks for keeping an eye on things, Mrs. Pritchard. It's good to know we have such observant neighbors." She beamed at the compliment, already planning her next surveillance report, no doubt. I drove to work with my mind racing, a silver BMW. The mysterious E had been visiting my house while I was working 60-hour weeks to pay for Vanessa's lifestyle. The audacity was breathtaking. Big Mike was already on site when I arrived at our current project, a luxury housing development in the hills outside Boston. Mike Sullivan had been my foreman for 5 years, a former Marine who ran our crews with military precision. He was also the closest thing I had to a real friend, someone who'd never pretend to like my wife just to stay on my good side. "You look like hell," he said without preamble, hard hat pushed back on his graying head. "Trouble at home?" "You could say that." I handed him the morning's revised blueprints. "What do you know about private investigators?" Mike raised an eyebrow. "The kind that follow cheating spouses?" "I know a guy. Discreet, thorough, doesn't ask questions." "Why?" "Just curious." "Uh-huh." He studied my face with the same intensity he used to inspect foundation work. "You want my advice? Sometimes it's better not to know the details. The big picture is usually enough." "What if the big picture isn't complete?" "Then you fill in the blanks with facts, not assumptions. But be prepared. Facts have a way of changing everything." I spent the morning buried in work, trying to lose myself in the familiar rhythms of construction management. Checking materials deliveries, reviewing safety protocols, solving the dozen small crises that arose daily when you're coordinating 50 workers across multiple job sites. But my mind kept drifting back to that silver BMW, to the secret phone, to Vanessa's casual cruelty in those text messages. During lunch break, I called the private investigator Mike had recommended. His name was Tom Bradley, and his voice carried the weary professionalism of someone who'd seen every possible variation of human betrayal. "I need information about someone," I told him. "Someone who's been involved with my wife." "How much information?" "Everything. Name, address, family situation, financial status, criminal background if he has one. I want to know who I'm dealing with." "I'll need a retainer. $500 up front, then we'll see how deep this goes." "How long will it take?" "Depends on how careful your wife's boyfriend has been. If he's sloppy, maybe a day or two. If he's smart, could take a week." I transferred the money that afternoon, then drove to Murphy's Tavern. a dive bar near the construction site where the beer was cheap and the bartender minded her own business. Barb Murphy had inherited the place from her father and ran it like a confessional booth. Everyone's secrets were safe, but she heard them all. "Nick Harper," she said as I slid onto a bar stool. "Haven't seen you in here for months. Vanessa finally let you off your leash?" "She's in Ibiza. Girls' trip." Barb snorted, polishing a glass with practiced efficiency. "Ibiza. Right. Because nothing says female bonding like the party capital of Europe." She set a beer in front of me without being asked. "You know, your wife was in here a few weeks ago, with some friends I didn't recognize." "What kind of friends?" "The kind that order top-shelf liquor and tip with $100 bills, the kind that think they're slumming it by drinking in a place like this." She leaned against the bar. "One of them was asking about you, actually. Wanted to know what kind of man you were, what you did for work, whether you had a temper." "Asking about me?" "Real subtle-like. But I've been tending bar for 20 years, Nick. I know when someone's fishing for information." She paused. "Your wife seemed real interested in his questions, almost like she was conducting a job interview." The beer tasted like ash in my mouth. "What did you tell them?" "The truth. That you're a good man who works hard and treats people fairly. That you've never raised your voice in my establishment, never caused trouble, always pay your tab." She fixed me with a steady look. But I got the feeling they weren't looking for character references. My phone buzzed with a text from Vanessa. "Having dinner at the most amazing restaurant. The sunset here is incredible. Wish you could see it, but you'd probably just complain about the prices." The photo showed her at a candlelit table, clearly dressed for seduction. But she wasn't alone. I could see a man's hand reaching for a wine glass, expensive watch catching the light. I showed the image to Barb. "Recognize the watch?" She squinted at the screen. "Rolex Submariner, 15,000 if it's real. Your wife's got expensive taste in dinner companions?" "Apparently." "You want some advice, Nick? From someone who's watched a lot of marriages fall apart in this place?" I nodded. "Don't let them make you into the bad guy. Whatever they're planning, whatever story they're telling themselves to justify it, don't give them ammunition. Stay smart, stay clean, and when the time comes to fight back, make it count." I finished my beer and left a 20 on the bar. "Thanks, Barb." "Anytime. And Nick, when this is over, come back and tell me how it ended. I like stories with good endings." The drive home took me past Vanessa's office building, a gleaming glass tower in downtown Boston where she worked as a senior account executive for a high-end PR firm. Her job involved managing the public image of wealthy clients, spinning their scandals into sympathetic narratives. She was good at it. Maybe too good. I parked across the street and called her direct line. Her assistant answered. "Vanessa Harper's office." "Hi, this is Nick Harper, Vanessa's husband. I was wondering if you could help me with something." "Of course, Mr. Harper. What do you need?" "I'm planning a surprise for when she gets back from her trip, and I wanted to make sure I had her schedule right. She's returning next Friday, correct?" "Actually, she extended her vacation. She won't be back until the following Monday. She said she needed extra time to recharge." Extra time. To be with E, whoever he was. Did she mention where she'd be staying for the extended portion? She didn't say, just that she'd found a more private location away from the tourist areas. I thanked her and hung up, pieces clicking into place. Vanessa had lied to me about her return date, which meant she was planning something that required additional time, something she didn't want me to know about. My phone rang as I pulled into my driveway. Tom Bradley, the private investigator. "I've got preliminary information on your target," he said without preamble. "Elliot Cross, 38 years old, CEO of a tech startup called Nexus Solutions, lives in a penthouse condo in Back Bay, drives a silver BMW 7 Series. Net worth approximately $2 million, most of it tied up in company stock. Is he married? Divorced 6 months ago. Messy split, wife got half of everything. Word is, he has a pattern of cheating with married women, likes the thrill, apparently. What else? Here's where it gets interesting. His company is in financial trouble. They're burning through investor money faster than they can raise it, and there are rumors about accounting irregularities. He's facing bankruptcy within the year unless he finds a major investor or a wealthy wife to bail him out. The pieces fell into place with sickening clarity. Elliot wasn't just sleeping with my wife, he was planning to marry her for her share of our assets. And Vanessa, blinded by his attention and her own dissatisfaction, was walking straight into his trap. "There's more," Bradley continued. "Cross has been researching you. Credit reports, property records, business filings. He knows exactly how much you're worth." "How much does he know?" "Everything. Your construction company's revenue, the value of your house, your investment accounts, even your retirement savings. This guy's done his homework." I sat in my driveway, engine running, processing this information. My wife's affair wasn't just about passion or excitement. It was a calculated business decision. She was trading me in for what she thought was a better model, and he was using her to solve his financial problems. "What do you want me to do next?" Bradley asked. "Keep digging. I want to know everything about Elliot Cross, his habits, his weaknesses, his secrets, and I want to know exactly what he and my wife are planning. This could get expensive. I don't care about the cost. I care about being prepared." After hanging up, I sat in my car for a long time, watching the house I'd built with my own hands. The house where Vanessa had entertained her lover while I was at work. The house she was planning to leave, taking half of everything with her. Mrs. Pritchard waved from her garden, still keeping watch over the neighborhood. I waved back, already forming a plan. If Vanessa and Elliot wanted to play games, I'd show them what a real player looked like. But first, I needed allies. The next morning brought a call from Sabrina Walsh, Vanessa's best friend and enabler extraordinaire. Her voice dripped with false concern, like honey poured over broken glass. "Nick, honey, I hope you don't mind me calling. I just wanted to check on you while Vanessa's away finding herself." "I'm fine, Sabrina. Thanks for asking." "Are you, though? Really? Because Vanessa mentioned you've been going through a rough patch, and I know how hard it can be when your partner needs space to grow." I gripped the phone tighter. "What exactly did Vanessa tell you?" "Oh, just that you've been resistant to her personal development journey, that you're threatened by her desire to expand her horizons." Sabrina's voice took on that therapeutic tone she used with her clients. "It's actually very common in relationships where one person is evolving and the other is stuck in old patterns." Old patterns. Don't take it personally, Nick. Some people are naturally more open to transformation than others. Vanessa has always been a free spirit. It's part of what makes her so special. The irony was breathtaking. Sabrina was lecturing me about my wife's special nature while that same wife was cheating on me in Ibiza. But I kept my voice level, almost grateful. "You're right, Sabrina. Vanessa is definitely transforming. I'm learning so much about who she really is. I'm so glad you're being open to this process. That's the first step toward healing. When she gets back, maybe the three of us could do a session together. I have some techniques that could really help you understand what Vanessa needs from a partner." "That sounds perfect. I'd love to understand what Vanessa needs." After hanging up, I called Tom Bradley for an update. His news was even better than I'd hoped. "Elliot Cross is in deeper trouble than I initially thought," he reported. "His company missed payroll last week, and there's a class action lawsuit brewing from investors who claim he misrepresented the technology. He's desperate for cash, and fast." "How desperate?" "Desperate enough to propose to your wife next week, according to the jewelry store receipt I found. He bought a 3-carat engagement ring yesterday, charged it to a credit card that's already maxed out." The audacity was stunning. While I was working to support her lifestyle, Elliot was planning to propose to my wife with jewelry he couldn't afford, funded by debts he couldn't pay. "There's something else," Bradley continued. "Cross has been meeting with a divorce attorney. They're planning to claim you were emotionally abusive, that Vanessa feared for her safety. It's a standard strategy to maximize her settlement and minimize yours." "Emotionally abusive?" I laughed bitterly. "The woman who's been systematically destroying my self-esteem for months is going to claim I abused her. It gets worse. They're documenting everything, taking photos of any arguments, recording conversations without your knowledge, building a case to paint you as the villain." I thanked Bradley and hung up, my mind racing. Vanessa and Elliot weren't just planning to leave me. They were planning to destroy me in the process, take my money, ruin my reputation, and walk away feeling justified about it. But they'd made one crucial mistake. They'd underestimated me. I spent the afternoon at Murphy's Tavern, nursing a beer and thinking through my options. Barb was working the day shift, polishing glasses and keeping half an eye on the baseball game playing on the corner TV. "You look like a man with a plan," she observed. "Getting there." I showed her the photos from Vanessa's secret phone. Nothing explicit, just enough to establish the timeline of her affair. Hypothetically, if someone wanted to make sure certain information reached the right people, how would they go about it? Barb studied the images with professional interest. Hypothetically, I'd say information has a way of spreading naturally if you plant it in the right soil. Take your wife's PR firm, for example. They're very concerned about their reputation, very careful about the kind of people they associate with. Hypothetically, if they knew one of their senior executives was involved in something messy, something that could reflect poorly on the company, they might take preventive action. What kind of preventive action? The kind that protects their other clients. The kind that maintains their professional standards. She set down her glass. Of course, they'd need proof. Solid evidence, not just rumors. I nodded, understanding. And what about the man in question? Hypothetically. Well, if he's facing financial difficulties, the last thing he'd want is negative publicity. Bad press makes investors nervous, makes creditors impatient, could accelerate his timeline considerably. Accelerate it how? Force him to make desperate moves. Desperate people make mistakes, and mistakes create opportunities. I finished my beer and left another generous tip. Barb's advice was always worth paying for. That evening, I drove to Elliot's penthouse building in Back Bay. The doorman was young, probably working his way through college, and he looked bored enough to welcome conversation. "Excuse me," I said, approaching his desk. "I'm supposed to meet Elliot Cross, but he's not answering his phone. Is he in?" "Mr. Cross?" "No, he's been traveling for the past week. Left last Friday, said he'd be back Monday." Last Friday, the same day Vanessa left for Ibiza. "Did he mention where he was going?" The doorman shrugged. "Somewhere in Europe, I think. He seemed pretty excited about it." I thanked him and walked back to my car, another piece of the puzzle clicking into place. Elliot hadn't just been texting with my wife. He was actually in Ibiza with her, probably staying at that private location she'd mentioned to her assistant. My phone buzzed with a text from Vanessa. "Missing you." "Well, sort of. Having too much fun to miss anyone too much. Hope you're not being too boring without me." The casual cruelty of it made my jaw clench. She was rubbing my nose in her betrayal, confident that I was too naive or too weak to figure out what was really happening. I drove home and spent the evening in my workshop, sanding the antique dresser with methodical precision. The repetitive motion helped me think, helped me plan. By the time I went to bed, I knew exactly what I was going to do. The next morning, I called Vanessa's office and asked to speak with her boss, Patricia Winters. Patricia was a sharp woman in her 50s who'd built the PR firm from nothing and protected it fiercely. She agreed to meet me for coffee, curiosity evident in her voice. "Nick, this is unexpected," she said as we settled into a corner booth at a cafe near her office. "Is everything all right with Vanessa?" "That's what I'm trying to figure out." I pulled out printed copies of select text messages from Vanessa's secret phone, carefully chosen to show her affair without revealing how I'd obtained them. I found these on our home computer. I think Vanessa might be in some kind of trouble. Patricia's expression hardened as she read through the messages. The text revealed not just the affair, but Vanessa's casual dismissal of her job, her clients, and her professional responsibilities. "And this is very concerning," Patricia said finally. "Some of these messages discuss confidential client information, and the timeline suggests she's been conducting personal business during work hours." "I'm worried about her judgment," I said, playing the concerned husband perfectly. "This man she's involved with, I've done some research. His company is facing serious financial difficulties, and there are questions about his business practices." "What kind of questions?" I handed her a folder of information Tom Bradley had compiled about Elliot Cross. Financial records, lawsuit documents, news articles about Nexus Solutions problems. Patricia's face grew darker with each page. "Vanessa is associating our firm with this man?" she asked. "Apparently. And according to these messages, she's planning to leave me for him. I'm concerned about what that might mean for her decision-making at work." Patricia closed the folder with a sharp snap. "Thank you for bringing this to my attention, Nick. I'll handle it from here." I hope I did the right thing. I just want what's best for Vanessa, even if she can't see it right now. "You did exactly the right thing. A woman in her position can't afford to make these kinds of mistakes." I left the cafe feeling lighter than I had in weeks. Phase 1 of my plan was in motion. By the time Vanessa returned from Ibiza, she'd find her professional life in shambles, her reputation damaged, and her future with Elliot Cross looking far less appealing. But I wasn't done yet. Not even close. That afternoon, I visited 3 more locations. The country club where Vanessa played tennis, the boutique where she shopped for overpriced clothes, and the salon where she got her hair done. At each stop, I played the same role. The concerned husband worried about his wife's involvement with a questionable businessman. I didn't lie or exaggerate. I simply shared facts. Elliot Cross was facing bankruptcy. His company was under investigation, and he had a history of targeting married women. The rest, I let them figure out for themselves. By evening, the gossip network that Vanessa had always relied on was working against her. The same women who'd envied her lifestyle were now whispering about her poor judgment, her association with a con man, her betrayal of a good husband. My phone rang as I was having dinner. Tom Bradley again. "Interesting development," he said. "Elliot Cross just booked a first-class flight back to Boston, arriving tomorrow morning, alone." "What about Vanessa?" "Still in Ibiza, according to her social media. Looks like Loverboy cut the trip short." I smiled grimly. Financial emergency? That would be my guess. His creditors are getting impatient, and word is spreading about his company's problems. He probably needs to do damage control. Perfect. Keep monitoring the situation. I want to know the moment he lands. After hanging up, I poured myself a glass of the expensive scotch Vanessa had bought for entertaining clients. It tasted like victory. Tomorrow, the real confrontation would begin. Elliot Cross looked exactly like his social media photos. Tall, artificially tan, with the kind of carefully maintained appearance that screamed insecurity. I watched him exit the airport terminal, designer luggage in tow, scanning for his driver with the entitled impatience of someone accustomed to being catered to. I'd been waiting for 2 hours, positioned where I could observe without being seen. Tom Bradley had provided Elliot's flight information, and I wanted to see my wife's lover in person before making my next move. He looked tired, stressed, constantly checking his phone. Whatever had happened in Ibiza to cut his romantic getaway short, it wasn't good news for his plans with Vanessa. I followed his car at a distance as it wound through Boston traffic toward his penthouse. My own car was unremarkable, a work truck that blended into the urban landscape. Construction managers learned to be invisible when necessary. At his building, I watched Elliot argue with the doorman, the same young man I'd spoken with days earlier. Even from across the street, I could see the tension in their body language. Money problems, most likely. Rich men who couldn't pay their bills made enemies quickly in expensive buildings. My phone buzzed with a text from Vanessa. Elliot had to leave early for work emergency, so disappointed. But I'm staying through the weekend to really complete my transformation. Can't wait to show you the new me. The new her. I almost laughed at the irony. Vanessa thought she was reinventing herself, but she was actually just revealing who she'd always been underneath the facade. I drove to Murphy's Tavern, where Barb was setting up for the evening shift. The place was nearly empty, just a few regulars nursing beers and watching the news. "You look like a cat who caught a canary," Barb observed as I took my usual stool, getting closer. I accepted the beer she slid across the bar. Hypothetically, if someone wanted to arrange a meeting with a business rival, what would be the best approach? Depends on what kind of meeting, social or professional. Professional, the kind where both parties benefit from a frank exchange of information. Barb considered this while wiping down glasses. I'd say the direct approach is usually best. Call, introduce yourself, suggest a mutually beneficial conversation. Most businessmen appreciate honesty, especially when they are facing difficulties. And if the conversation doesn't go well, then at least you know where you stand. Knowledge is power, Nick. Always has been. I finished my beer and headed home, Barb's words echoing in my mind. Knowledge was power, and I had more knowledge than Elliot Cross realized. That evening, I called Nexus Solutions and asked to speak with the CEO. To my surprise, Elliot took the call personally, a sign of how desperate his situation had become. Elliot Cross speaking? "Mr. Cross, my name is Nick Harper. I believe you know my wife, Vanessa." The silence on the other end stretched for several seconds. When he spoke again, his voice was carefully controlled. "I'm not sure what you're implying, Mr. Harper." "I'm not implying anything. I'm stating facts. You've been having an affair with my wife for 3 months. You just returned from Ibiza, where you were planning to propose to her, and you're hoping her divorce settlement will solve your financial problems." Another pause. "I think there's been some misunderstanding." "No misunderstanding. I have documentation, text messages, photos, hotel receipts, jewelry store records. I know about your company's troubles, your missed payroll, the investor lawsuit. I know you're facing bankruptcy within the year. What do you want?" His facade cracked slightly, revealing the desperation underneath. "A conversation, face to face, tonight?" "I don't think that's wise." "I think it's necessary. Murphy's Tavern on Riverside Drive, 9 o'clock. Come alone, and we can discuss this like civilized men. Don't come, and I start making phone calls to your investors, your creditors, and the business reporters who've been asking questions about Nexus Solutions. Are you threatening me? I'm offering you a choice. See you at 9, Mr. Cross." I arrived at Murphy's early and chose a table in the back corner, away from the bar's other patrons. Barb caught my eye and nodded. She'd keep the curious at bay while I conducted my business. Elliot arrived exactly on time, scanning the room nervously before spotting me. Up close, he looked even more stressed than he had at the airport. His expensive suit couldn't hide the tension in his shoulders, the slight tremor in his hands. "Mr. Harper?" He slid into the seat across from me, declining my offer of a drink. "I have to say, this is highly irregular." "So is sleeping with another man's wife." I kept my voice conversational, almost friendly, but here we are. "I'm not going to discuss my personal relationships with you." "Fair enough. Let's discuss business instead. I pulled out a folder and spread its contents across the table. Financial documents, legal papers, news articles, everything Tom Bradley had uncovered about Elliot's situation. Nexus Solutions is hemorrhaging money. You've got maybe 6 weeks before complete collapse. Your investors are getting nervous, your employees are updating their resumes, and your creditors are circling like sharks. Elliot's face went pale as he recognized documents that should have been confidential. How did you get these? Does it matter? The point is, you're desperate. Desperate enough to seduce a married woman and convince her to leave her financially stable husband for a man who can't make payroll. You don't understand the situation. I understand it perfectly. You need money? Fast. Vanessa thinks she's going to get half of everything I own in a divorce. You're planning to marry her and use my assets to save your failing company. I leaned forward. It's actually a clever plan. Too bad it's not going to work. You can't stop two people from being in love? Love? I laughed, and the sound carried enough edge to make him flinch. You think this is about love? You researched my wife's financial situation before you ever spoke to her. You know exactly how much she's worth down to the dollar. That's not love, Mr. Cross. That's business. Elliot straightened in his chair, trying to regain some authority. Even if that were true, there's nothing you can do about it. Vanessa is an adult. She can make her own choices. You're absolutely right. She can choose to leave me for a bankrupt con man who's using her to solve his financial problems. But she should make that choice with all the facts, don't you think? I pulled out my phone and showed him a video I'd recorded earlier. A news report about Nexus Solutions' troubles, complete with interviews from angry investors and former employees. This is going live on the business news tonight, I said. By tomorrow morning, everyone in Boston will know about your company's problems, including Vanessa. You bastard. I prefer thorough. You see, Mr. Cross, you made a fundamental error in judgment. You assumed I was just another complacent husband who'd roll over and accept being betrayed. You didn't do your research on me the way you did on my assets. What's that supposed to mean? It means you don't know who you're dealing with. I built my construction company from nothing. I've negotiated with union bosses, dealt with corrupt city officials, and outmaneuvered competitors who tried to destroy me. I didn't get where I am by being nice or naive. Elliot was sweating now, despite the tavern's air conditioning. What do you want from me? I want you to disappear. End the affair, leave Vanessa alone, and focus on salvaging what's left of your pathetic company. And if I don't? I smiled, and something in my expression made him lean back in his chair. Then I destroy you completely. Not just your business, your reputation, your social standing, your future prospects. I have enough dirt on you to bury you so deep you'll never see daylight again. You're bluffing. Am I? I pulled out another document, a detailed report on Elliot's previous affairs, his pattern of targeting married women, his history of financial mismanagement. I know about the Henderson woman, and the Roberts divorce, and the investment fraud in Chicago that you barely escaped prosecution for. I know about your gambling debts, and your cocaine habit, and the restraining order your ex-wife filed. Elliot's face went white. Those records are sealed. Money talks, Mr. Cross, and unlike you, I actually have some. I gathered up the papers and returned them to the folder. So here's what's going to happen. You're going to call Vanessa tonight and end things. Tell her you've realized you're not ready for a serious relationship, that you need to focus on your career. Whatever story helps her save face. Then you're going to disappear from her life completely. She won't believe it. She'll know you got to me. Then you'd better be convincing, because if you're not, if you try to continue this affair or contact her again after she returns, I'll release everything I have on you. Your investors will flee, your creditors will foreclose, and you'll be lucky to get a job managing a McDonald's. Elliot sat in silence for a long moment, staring at the table. When he finally looked up, his eyes held the hollow desperation of a man who'd run out of options. You win, he said quietly. This isn't about winning, it's about consequences. You made choices, and now you have to live with them. He stood to leave, then paused. What about Vanessa? What happens when she comes home? That's between me and my wife. But I suggest you pray she doesn't try to contact you, because if she does, our deal is off. Elliot walked away without another word, shoulders slumped in defeat. I watched him go, feeling no satisfaction in his humiliation. This had never been about destroying him. It was about protecting what was mine. Barb appeared at my table as soon as Elliot left. That looked intense. Just a business discussion. I finished the beer I'd barely touched. Sometimes you have to make things clear to people. And did you? Make things clear? Crystal clear. I drove home through the quiet streets of our neighborhood, past the houses where normal couples were settling in for the evening, watching TV or helping kids with homework or simply enjoying each other's company. Simple pleasures that I'd taken for granted until they were threatened. My phone was buzzing with increasingly frantic texts from Vanessa as the evening progressed. Elliot had apparently followed through on his promise to end things, though not gracefully. "I don't understand what's happening," she wrote. "Elliot just called and said he couldn't see me anymore. He seemed scared, Nick. Really scared. Did you do something?" I typed back, "I have no idea what you're talking about. Who's Elliot?" "Don't play dumb. I know you know about us. I know you went to Ibiza with your girlfriends. Beyond that, I'm not sure what you mean." The lies came easily now, as easily as hers had for months. If she wanted to play games, I'd show her how it was done. My phone rang an hour later. Vanessa, crying. "Nick, I need to tell you something. I've made some mistakes while I've been away. I got confused about what I wanted, and I hurt you. I'm so sorry." "What kind of mistakes?" "I met someone. A man. I thought I had feelings for him, but I was wrong. I was just running away from our problems instead of trying to fix them." The performance was impressive. The right amount of guilt, the perfect tone of remorse. If I hadn't seen those text messages, if I didn't know about her plans to leave me, I might have been fooled. "I see," I said neutrally. "Can you forgive me? Can we try to work things out? I want to come home and be the wife you deserve." "When are you planning to return?" "Tomorrow. I've already changed my flight. I just want to put this behind us and start over." "That sounds good, Vanessa. We have a lot to talk about." "We do. And Nick, I love you. I know I haven't shown it lately, but I do love you." The words felt like acid in my ears. 3 hours ago, she'd been planning to divorce me and take half of everything I'd worked for. Now, with her backup plan destroyed, she was ready to come crawling back and pretend none of it had happened. "I love you too," I lied smoothly. "See you tomorrow." After hanging up, I poured myself another scotch and sat in my workshop, surrounded by the tools and projects that represented the life I'd built through honest work and careful planning. Vanessa thought she could waltz back into that life as if nothing had changed, as if her betrayal could be erased with a few tears and empty apologies. She was about to learn how wrong she was. Tomorrow would bring the final act of our marriage, and this time I'd be the one writing the script.